Madam Chair, congratulations to you, knowing of your work in Congress on this subject. I'm just delighted that you have this distinguished honor to serve as chair, and it's a blessing to all of us. Thank you for your welcoming remarks, and thank all of you for your participation. To the Vice Chair, Mahmoud, where's Mahmoud? Welcome to you as well, and the commissioners of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom in convening this important hearing. I'm going to just talk about a few things, but I do want to commend John Molinar, our colleague, and Jim McGovern for their work, their principled leadership. They have been remarkable. I've seen them in action. Most recently, John Molinar spoke at the Taiwan anniversary, their National Day. He was remarkable, putting forth principles of democracy and faith. Jim McGovern as well. So again, for years, the world is watching horror as the Chinese Communist Party has carried a systemic campaign to erase faith from public life and replace it with loyalty to the party. Under Deng Xiaoping, the Sonization of religion, entire communities have faced unspeakable persecution. I'm just going to say a couple of things. This is not exhaustive of what they've done, but representative. Tibetan Buddhists, I know you're going to be hearing more about this, see their monasteries desecrated while being denied the right to venerate His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Just a brief story. When President Xi was in the United States, Senator Feinstein and I spoke to him about Tibet. He said, well, you haven't been there. You haven't seen all the great things we've done in Tibet. You should go there. I said, well, for 25 years, I've been trying to get a visa for Tibet. I assume that you're giving me a visa right now. And so we took a delegation to Tibet. Jim McGovern was part of that. And what we saw was heartbreaking, because what we saw was the Sinonization of Tibet and religion there. He said, oh, you should see, we put gold, and we fixed up the roof of the temple. I said, I don't care about what's in the temple. I care what you're putting in the minds of the children there. But what we saw was a complete hypocrisy. We were surrounded by spies, I guess you would call them, the whole time we're there. But what's so sad about it is that the children, they're trying to deprive them of their culture, of their religion, of their language and the rest, but their faith. Faith is what gives people hope. I wear these bracelets. Faith. People say, where's hope? I said, it's where it always has been, right between faith, hope, and charity. If you believe in the goodness, charity, and love that is out there, it gives you hope. And the people of Tibet believe, and so they have hope, but that's being diminished, that hope, by my teenagers in San Francisco say to me, hope is our resistance. They're Asian, and they share our concern here. And I said, well, resistance is our hope in all of this in terms of faith. The Uyghur Muslims endure unending oppression, detained, sterilized, brutalized for daring to practice their faith openly. My side story on that is when President Trump was at G20 a number of years ago in his first term, I said to him, I know you can't bring up what's going on in the streets of Hong Kong because, President Xi is there, but you can tell President Xi that House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans are concerned about Uyghurs. We have resolutions of this or that. It's bipartisan, it's bicameral. So you tell him that. So the next day he calls me back and he said, this is when he was in Japan for G20 and President Xi was there. He came back and said, mentioned to President Xi what you said. And he said, oh, they like being in those camps. Imagine. That's what he thinks is a good, not he, Xi thinks is an acceptable answer. Christians are harassed and imprisoned, forced to worship in state-controlled churches. And I've been to those state-controlled churches, and they look like a Catholic church. But I also know what they're doing martyring Catholics and Christians. They're taking down signs of religion, replacing it with their own structures about it. I work with Cardinal Zen for decades on this subject of Catholics there, but it applies to Christians as well. Even the physical architecture of faith is being torn down and rebuilt to serve the party's interests. These are not isolated incidences. They're part of an organized campaign to subordinate every belief and every person to the control of the state. As Americans, we have a moral duty to speak out against these atrocities. Thank you for doing that today and every day. And if America does not speak out, I always say, if America does not speak out against human rights violations and rights of freedom of religion in China, we lose all moral authority to speak about it any place in the world. For decades, this commission has given voice to the voiceless and has stood shoulder to shoulder with the persecuted from Tibet to the Uyghurs, from Hong Kong to Beijing itself. And throughout, support for international religious freedom has remained a bipartisan cornerstone of America's foreign policy, expression of who we are as a nation and what we believe as a people. For decades, Democrats and Republicans alike have spoken together with one voice that defending human rights and religious freedom is not a partisan issue, but a patriotic duty. For the witnesses, advocates, and communities represented here today, thank you for your courage and for your unwavering commitment to protecting the freedom to practice your faith. I'll just say this one more thing. This is personal. I grew up with this attitude in my family. When I was born, my father was in Congress from Maryland, Madam Chair, and he testified in Congress. He worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. You can just imagine, one of the few and early Italian Americans to serve in Congress, worshipped the shrine of Franklin, except when it came to the persecution of Jewish people in Europe. He didn't think America was doing enough. And so he went to the floor of the House and he spoke, and this was his record. He said, Mr. Speaker, over 2 million, this was early in it all, over 2 million people, Jewish people, have been killed, murdered in Europe only for what they believe, for their faith. They have been murdered. And this information is well known to the administration and in the archives of the State Department, which was a real charge against the administration, even though he worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. So that prioritizing of faith and people being persecuted for has been something in our family for a very long time. And I always think of it when we're doing this, that what you are doing with this commission is making it well known, and that's the knowledge of it all. And for those who are being persecuted, the word getting back to them that this commission is speaking out for them gives them, those with faith, and the goodness of you, hope. Thank you for giving people hope.